I'm Miko Pawlikowski, and this is Hockey Stick. Today, I'm joined by Harpreet Sahota, a well-known voice in the AI community and a cool human being overall. Harpreet is the hacker in residence at Voxel 51, and you might have seen his writing and courses in the field of artificial intelligence, including prompt engineering with LangChain and his upcoming Wiley book called Practical Retrieval Augmentation Generation. If you, like me, want to know what the hacker in residence does and how to become one, tune in. Welcome to this episode, and thank you for flying Hockey Stick. When you go to a new party or at the dinner table, how do you introduce yourself, and what else do you tell people that you do? For most people, it's easier. You do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but I'm usually quite quiet in person. So if I'm at a dinner party or something like that, I'm usually just like listening to other people. And so when people ask me what I do, I just say I get to do just shit that I love for work. Like it really feels like a play. Like I get to just play around with technology and learn stuff and then hack around, tinker, and try to do things that I think are cool, and hopefully other people find them cool and useful, and try to help educate people. That's how I describe it. And people double down on that. And then I talk about, it's mostly just code and writing and speaking and things like that.
Okay, so is that what hacker in residence actually means? So tell us a little bit about Voxel 51. You do cool stuff, and I think anybody following you, and there's a lot of followers of yours on LinkedIn and such, they see all these cool, nice, polished videos. So what do you focus on? What does Voxel 51 actually pay you to do?
So hacker in residence, I'll start there. The typical title you'll see for this role is like developer advocate or developer relations or something like that. But I feel like for companies that are in the AI space and where the role is actually a lot more engineering and code focused than just being out there and talking to people and creating content, I think hacker in residence is a better fit. And especially in this role, because I get to just use their open source library and try to find new ways to use it for generative AI type of applications. So traditionally, 51, the open source library, it's used for visual AI and canonically computer vision type of tasks, detection, segmentation, and whatnot. And my role is now I get to hack around with the product and try to find new applications and use cases for that, for more cross-modal and multimodal and vision language type of use cases. So how can we use this open source library now to capture this new type of engineer, this new type of AI engineer, this new kind of frontier really in deep learning that we're headed towards. And so that's where the title Hack in Residence came from. I was inspired by actually a job posting at Replicate. And I read the job posting at Replicate. I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is like exactly the type of job that I was doing. And it's the type of title that I feel is right. And there's a episode of the Latent Space podcast where they're talking to the CEO of Replicate and Swix and the CEO there. We're having a bit of a discussion about that job title, developer relations, and how in AI it's more of appropriate to have this title of hacker in residence, because that's essentially what we're doing, just hacking around with the product and trying to find new ways to use it.
Yeah, and it looks really cool from the receiving end of watching your videos. I think I saw a bunch of times recently when you got some new hardware to play with and put up some really cool demos and go and speak about it. That sounds like, for a lot of people, I would say, it's probably like a dream job. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it requires, I guess, a certain type of individual to enjoy doing that type of work. For me, it's fun. It's interesting because I enjoy this type of work, right? Like I enjoy learning about new things, being uncomfortable with my lack of knowledge and trying to learn new things and share them and write about them. I enjoy that more than just traditional engineering all day long. So it's a good balance and blend of both. From the outside, it might seem like an ideal role for everyone, but I don't think it is an ideal role for everyone. I think it does require a certain type of skill set and flexibility to really be successful in this type of role.
Yeah, that reminds me of a conversation I had a few days ago. We're wrapping out the conference, and I was chatting to one of my buddies, Erwin Daria. If you're listening today, hey, a shout out. He's got a different title now, but it's essentially a similar job to yours at Stormforge. And it's just, some people just have this natural capacity to go and communicate with others in a way that feels natural. You're still selling something, let's be honest here, right? You're still being paid to sell something, but some people just have that, and I guess some other don't. You seem clearly like one of the naturals there. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you evolved, where you started? My guess is that you started as a software engineer or some adjacent job, and how you evolved to be doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, for sure. But just on that point, just in terms of selling something, we've got an open source library, right? So it's not about selling something. In this case, it's about showing people a new way to do things, a new tool to use for the workflow. So on that point, yeah, there are some people who are more traditional evangelist type roles where everything they're doing is behind a paid API or something like that. Yeah, to that point, they're most likely selling something. But in the open source world, we're just looking to build community around a product, have people help each other and make the ecosystem around the product more robust. So that being said, traditional background, I wasn't really ever a software engineer. I still don't consider myself an engineer. I consider myself more of a hacker. But I studied like math and stats, and first job out of university as a master's student was as a actuary. So I worked as an actuary for a few years, then was a biostatistician for several years before moving into data science role. But just to be clear, like actuary, biostats, data science, it's all the same shit, dude. It's all just code and math and statistical learning and classical ML. That's all it is. I was working as a data scientist, and then I was like a lead data scientist. I started a podcast. This company came to me, Comet. They're like an experiment management platform, and they wanted to sponsor my podcast. And so podcast got sponsored by them. And then they brought me on board. They're like, hey, we got this role called developer advocate. We think you'd be a great fit for it. And I was like, all right, this is the stuff that I'm doing on the side already. And oh my God, it's a full-time job and it pays really well. Sign me up. So started working at Comet ML for a while. And then went over to this company called Pachyderm. I stayed there for a very short while. And even though I loved like the founders and the team there, I realized quickly that I wasn't like the right person for that product. It was a really infrastructure heavy type of product, required a lot of Docker and Kubernetes knowledge, which I didn't have. And there's an opportunity that came with Deci AI. I signed up for that because I was primarily doing deep learning type of stuff, which I was like, dude, this is awesome. Yeah. This is exactly what I'm into. And then I was at Deci AI for almost 2 years, year and a half, a little bit more than that. And they're actually just recently acquired by NVIDIA. And that acquisition happened just shortly after I left. The entire team that I was a part of got axed. That happened at the right time. And I went over to Voxel 51. It's so awesome, dude. Like the team is awesome. The people are great. They're all super smart. And it's a really important product, I think, especially in the kind of pipeline and stack of deep learning, because it's focused primarily on data and data curation, which traditionally I've always been into the sexy part of deep learning, which is just the model building and all that. But it's really actually fascinating fun to play around with these different data sets and try to iterate and curate data sets to build better models.
Maybe that's a good segue to, before we circle back, and I'm going to ask you about the dark side of your job and what sucks about it. Tell us a bit more, because I only know Voxel 51 very high level as some kind of dev tooling for ML. Tell us a little bit more about what's under the hood.
Like I was mentioned before, it's completely open source library. So if you do pip install 51, you get access to the Python SDK. But in addition to the Python SDK, there's the 51 app and the 51 brain. So you do pip install 51, you get access to all of that. And the core concept of 51 is this dataset object. And so this dataset object is actually backed by a non-relational MongoDB database. And it's actually turns out to be the most perfect medium to work with visual data, because this dataset object is comprised of samples. Every sample has a media file associated with it. That media file can be an image, it could be a video, it could be a thermal image, you name it, any visual kind of medium that is accepted as the kind of the anchor of a sample. And then along with that visual asset, you have arbitrary labels. One image can have, of course, not only just a label of what is in that image, but it can also have the detections, the bounding boxes, the segmentation mask, the depth mask of that. And it can even have key points for whatever's in that object, because there's so many different ways to capture information about one particular image, right? Image was worth 1,000 words. Likewise, an images can have 1,000 labels. And so this now allows you to do some really interesting and flexible queries against this unstructured data set that you have, which I think is super fascinating, because typically if you're trying to explore a data set, you're like clicking into folders, you're looking at images one by one, or you're having to write a lot of custom code to parse your image with your labels or your masks or your bounding boxes, and so on and so forth. And that's tedious and painful to do. And it's nice to have a SDK that allows you to manipulate and curate that library, but also that app itself so you can visually explore what is in your data set.
That really does sound awesome. I always wonder with the open source companies, what the business model is. Do you have a business model, or for now you're just like giving stuff away for free?
No, so the open source library, pip install 51, you have essentially a fully featured product that you can use locally, one user, one machine, and you're good to go. But the moment you try to extend that to a team, right? For example, accessing remote storage or having multiple people iterate on a data set, then that becomes a paid product. And for that, we charge by seat.
So that's the gateway code you give away for free. That makes so much sense. So tell us a bit more about the dark side of being in the kind of role that you are. What would you say sucks the most about it?
It's just there's so many different responsibilities. As somebody that has ADHD, that's really tough for me to manage, right? On any given week, it's not just I have a feature to work on or a project to see through to completion. It's like, all right, I've got to manage the Slack community. I've got live sessions to host or attend. I've got podcasts to be on. I've got blogs to write. I've got videos to shoot. I've got a new data set or a new model that came out that I need to like hype up and see how it fits with our product. So that's the hardest part, is that there's just so many different things to do. But luckily, Jimmy is the boss here at Box 51 for our team. And he's an OG DevRel, been around the block for several years, and he very much keeps us focused and in line. Yeah. And so he allows us to say no to a lot of things, because we got marketing knocking on our door saying, hey, look, we need blogs on this topic. And marketing it should be easy just to churn out a blog. And actually, no, we don't churn out blogs. We create educational content and material like that. You don't churn that out. You execute on that thoughtfully, and you try to make it as good as possible. He does a good job of providing air cover, if you will. So that's nice in that sense. But yeah, sometimes there's things that take priority. For example, creating stuff in advance of CVPR was a lot of work. I did write a lot of blogs and create a lot of videos about that. It wasn't necessarily the thing that I enjoyed doing the most, right? Like I didn't really enjoy creating those type of short form videos or writing those blogs, but it was part of the job, so I got it done. Like I'd much rather have spent time heads down writing code and maybe trying to do a more in-depth, thoughtful, meaningful project using some of the research that was done at CVPR. For example, if there's a new model that came out or some new data sets or benchmarks. And granted, I've only been at the company at this point in time for a few months, so there's a bit of a learning curve on the product, but I feel like that type of work is more meaningful and enjoyable for me. But yeah, just having my attention split 100 different ways, when it does happen, it takes a toll.
And it's so easy to just underestimate the amount of work that goes into a good blog post, right? It reads quickly. Surely it can't be that much time, but I know many CTOs who spend like 20-25% of their time just doing stuff like that, because it goes into hiring, it goes into your brand, it helps with raising funds, it helps with everything. So it's actually very important, but it's hard to put finger directly on how much work it should be. Yeah. Should you just use ChatGPT to generate that next time?
A good blog post for me will take like a solid week, honestly, for me to do. If it's like really high quality work, it's going to take a full on week. Like I could churn out something in a day and a half, and that's fairly simple to do if it's templatized and I know exactly what it's the template I'm going to follow. That doesn't really give me the depth. Just from my own intellectual curiosity, I don't get the depth of exploring something.
Yeah, and ironically, the shorter the form, the harder it is, right? Because you have to decide what goes in, and it's equally important to decide what doesn't go in. Do you also edit your videos, or do you have a team to handle that for you?
I typically will edit myself in Descript. Like I love using Descript, and if I have a vision that I'm trying to get out, then I want to see that through. And even that editing takes so long, a ton of work. Because a video is not just the video, it's the script. And then if there's code, you got to write the code. And then there's like the delivery aspect of it. And then once you record it, even recording is not easy. Recording takes very long because there's like retakes, and that luckily the script makes it easy to edit out those mistakes, as you will see when editing this podcast, right? And just whatever overlays of text or media or things like that, you just thinking about what you want to overlay on top of that. Yeah, a ton of work.
We can definitely confirm what you're saying about editing. We use the script for this show, and it shortens the amount of work. You do end up with a finished product in that you got your transcript and you get the video, but still so much work. And frankly, I don't know if I would have gone into doing this if I realized fully just how much work it was to do that kind of stuff. But you still seem to have copious amount of free time because there's a million other things that you're doing on top of that. Should we start talking about your book then?
Seriously, free time, man. I wish I had more of it. I tend to just, I don't know, maybe I'm allergic to free time. I just can't say no to doing things, and it just eats up all my time. But yeah, let's go into all those 100 other things I just should say no to, but end up just saying yes.
Some people are just like that, right? Some people are happy to sit and watch something, and others are like, I'm done watching, I want to make something. So they just end up with free time. So for anybody who's not yet, because you should, following Harpreet on LinkedIn, I saw one of his interesting posts very casually. He just dropped it and said, hey, by the way, I forgot to mention, but I'm also writing a book. I said yes to it about a few months before, and now it's there, so it's on the way. Tell us about it.
Yeah, definitely still in the process of writing it. Life gets in the way more so lately than before, and I'm ending up missing my initial deadline so widely. Hopefully you guys don't just drop me, because I'm supposed to have a 250-page book done by November 28th. There's a lot of work ahead of me. The book is going to be about retrieval augmented generation, which is a topic that I've been really interested in. I got to go in depth with retrieval augmented generation using text data for this LinkedIn Learning course that is coming out really soon, hands-on retrieval augmented generation with Llama Index. And so the book is an extension of that work, where now instead of just focusing purely on text, I'm incorporating kind of multimodal RAG as a theme throughout the book. And undertook this kind of effort mostly. I'm not an expert in this by any means, but I figured if I write a book, I might become an expert in the process. And even if I don't become an expert in the process, I'll probably learn a lot of skills that will honestly and knowledge that will just never be taken away from me. So I figured, yeah, let's do it. That kind of is the way I tend to operate with a lot of stuff that I take on. I see it as a learning opportunity, and what little financial benefit I get from it is just enough of an incentive for me to see it through, because honestly, none of this shit pays well with the side hustle stuff that I do. But I do it anyway because it's just incentive to learn on a large scale.
No, I feel you, man. I definitely feel you. I know how much my book earned, and if you divide that by the number of hours, it would not be legal. But it was an amazing opportunity to really arrange things in my brain and actually be able to explain them rather than just have an idea with holes in it. So who should read the book? Who should not read the book? And why, other than an extension of your work, what you just said, why did we need another book on the shelf in the library?
So I'm writing this book for folks that are like me, more senior kind of technical folks. It will be very much hands-on with coding. And honestly, that does make me a bit fearful, because it means the book will get dated quite quickly. But the concepts and ideas I do choose to include, I hope are evergreen. But yeah, this book, especially for data scientists, AI engineers, and maybe more senior tech lead folks who want to understand retrieval augmented generation and the patterns for retrieval augmented generation, and how it works. I'm starting the book purposely leaving out a lot of stuff about deep learning in general, and just spend a little bit just talking about it and jump right into foundation models before talking about foundation models for text, vision, and then various cross-modal and multimodal embedding models. And then from there, talking about vector databases and the role they play, and moving more into patterns now for retrieval. And my hope is that technical folks will get some benefit from it. And the frustrating part is a lot of this stuff is new, right? Just this week, there's been some models that were released, and I've got to take time to look at them and play around with them and see, will this have a place in the book? How can I use it in the book? So a lot of this is me navigating the landscape as it currently is to try to figure out what might stick and include that going forward. And a lot of it is just looking back on what's happened over the last year and a half and figuring out what seems to have gotten a lot of citations and seems to have stuck, and including that in the book. So from that perspective, it's for people who want to figure out this landscape of not only foundation models, generative AI, but the latest research as well, and where that might fit into this retrieval augmented generation workflow.
Yeah, I always wonder when people start writing these books now, where we're at the point where everything is very fluid and changing, Is a book really the best medium for that? Because it might be easier to update like a course or something a little bit more spread out. But a book is like a self-contained unit where updating that takes a lot of time, right? How are you thinking about that? Was it a particular moment when you thought, okay, fine, so let's take a snapshot of how it is now and then we see how it goes? Or do you see yourself updating that book often?
I think the question is, why do we need another book on the shelf? Maybe we don't need another book on the shelf. Maybe it could just be better served as a series of blog posts to that effect. But initially, I was the one that was approached to write the book because I was a technical editor for another book. And they were like, hey, is there a book you think you should write? And I was like, all right, fascinated by retrieval augmented generation. I think I'll do it. And this does, because the theme of the book is multimodal RAG first, things will change a lot going forward. And there isn't a lot of books actually on multimodal RAG or just RAG in general. So I do feel like I'm doing something new and hopefully paving a way for more books to be written on this topic, or maybe just opening a lane for people just to smack talk how little I know because of the book. But yeah, I do see iterations of this book. It's going to have to be updated probably as soon as it's released. But my approach is just to focus on more patterns that are, I think, going to stand the test of time. And then you can just swap out models as they come. Because ultimately, I think that models are going to come and go. But those general patterns, I think, are what is sticky and what people need to have in their mind to be successful.
Is it possible to do a pre-order at the moment? How does it work with Wiley?
It's a good question. I saw that it was up on Amazon, but not yet up on the Wiley website. So I'm not sure what the pre-order process is like. But I think you can probably pre-order on Amazon. That might light enough of a fire under my butt for me to go finish writing the thing.
There you go. So you can probably pre-order. It's called Practical Retrieval Augmented Generation, Building Context-Aware AI Systems. And it's published by Wiley. It's in the Tech Today series. Is that title likely to stay? Or are you still working on it?
I think that's probably the most appropriate title for this book, because that's exactly what it is that we're doing. We're building context-aware AI systems, because right now it's no language model, vision language model, multimodal models. Like, they are based on the data that they're trained on. But often you might have data that is unique to you and your business, and you need to have a model that can reason over that. And so you need to augment the context that you feed to this model with that kind of private proprietary data so that you can derive value from it. For example, I used to work at this place called Price Industries, and it was a company that made HVAC equipment. And they had just this huge repository of PDFs, and these PDFs were like drawings and figures of these different HVAC systems, really. That type of data is definitely not part of the training data that these models were trained on. And if you try to ask questions about it, it won't know because it didn't have access to that during training. But if you can augment the context that we pass to the language model with this data, it becomes more beneficial for organizations.
You really had a ready answer for that. I was just half joking. I remember with my book, we were still wondering whether the title, it's called Chaos Engineering. It was probably the biggest problem about the book, but we kept going back and forth and we left chaos in there and probably didn't help with sales. All right, let's talk a bit about your prompt engineering course, LangChain. People might want an intro to what LangChain is. I'm interested in how you get pulled into doing LinkedIn courses and the video format of it, which is unlike the other things that I see. They're a little bit more casual and that you do. Tell us about all of that.
So LinkedIn initially reached out to me to do a course back in October of 2022. That was the first LinkedIn course I did. And this was a course called Computer Vision for Data Scientists. And to this day, it's like one of the courses I'm most proud of because just the work I put into it, and like I really had the target audience in mind, barring the fact that it uses a library called Super Gradients that at the time was associated with the Deci AI, the company I worked with. But that's just a small piece of the course. But that course is essentially the course that I wish that I had for me when I was getting into deep learning and computer vision. And that was my first foray into LinkedIn learning. And now that I had a foot in the door, I was like, okay, I could probably pitch another course and they'll probably be interested in it. And like I'd mentioned, hinted at before, like I incentivize myself in very interesting ways to learn something. And LangChain was coming up, and I figured I wanted to learn it because I felt like it's a skill that was worth having, orchestrating language models and being able to work with language models in a more programmatic way rather than just as a UI and connecting things together. And so I figured, let me pitch this course to LinkedIn, see if they're interested. And if they are, I'll use this as an opportunity for me to just learn LangChain inside out. and they're down with it. And they're like, yeah, let's go for it. And so that course, man, it caused me so much pain because the library just kept changing as I was building it out. So I had to rewrite the code 3 times. And this was quite frustrating. And the library itself is relatively new. It came out in itself October 2022 as well. So quite new library, less than 2 years old. So a lot of changes happening. They moved on to version 0.1, so a major version that was meant to be more stable, which made me happy. And that was the 3rd iteration of the code that I'd written for the course. And now since then, a few months right after release, they have now moved to major version 0.2. So it's like, all right, man, now I got to go write code again. But you can still take that prompt engineering course and still drive a lot of value of it. There hasn't been too drastic of a change between version 0.1 and 0.2 of LangChain. They've just some parts of the library. All the code that I wrote for that particular course was versions are pinned. So you can still pick up on the patterns, right? I think the patterns are important. The patterns are timeless rather than just like the individual lines of code that you write or the arguments that you're passing.
How did you find working with video? Like for the first time when you started working on the first course, you would have done a lot of writing by then, right? And then all of a sudden you're in this new form and it's video and really want it to be perfect and you do all these retakes. And when I ask different people who work with video, they either go, oh yeah, it's so much easier. I just bang it out and it's great. And if I try to write something, it takes forever. And the other camp is, okay, yeah, I've done 37 reshoots of this. I'm just going to leave it at this, not because I'm happy with it, but because I literally have no energy left in me. How was it for you?
To a certain extent, I was not a stranger to video content because I've done live streams and webinars and things like that. So the process of writing content, creating slides, and then presenting it in that format, it was something I'm familiar with. And the main difference is now putting it on wax, so to speak, for perpetuity, if you will. And that part is tough because LinkedIn does have requirements for the videos. Like you should try to keep them as concise and crisp as possible. They don't want you to go more than 7 minutes on any given video, which definitely makes sense. And so, I was very much in that camp that you'd mentioned later. Oh my God, this is so much work. It's draining. It's a lot of effort because there were a lot of retakes and reshoots. And yeah, it gets stressful, right? It's different than delivering it live because you do it live. Typically, it's not recorded. It's not on wax. People aren't going to be able to come back to it. Not to mention, there's the added pressure of the fact that this is LinkedIn Learning. They're like, LinkedIn is huge. They have 1 billion users. The learning platform has hundreds of millions of users. And there could be tens of thousands of people potentially that watch this course. And so there's the added pressure of making sure that every word I say is correct. Every line of code I write is useful. And that I'm not sounding like an airhead when I'm explaining things, so that there's that a bit of added pressure.
They give you a studio to record in, or is it entirely up to you how you record the videos as well?
You can go down to their studios in Carpinteria, California, which is just south of Santa Barbara, California. Absolutely beautiful place. So the first course I recorded there at the studio. The next 2 courses I recorded at home because it was just a bit too much for my wife to have me gone for a week, especially since my job requires me to travel so much as well. And so I opted to just record those courses at home. And I'll probably just continue to do that going forward until the kids are a little bit older. Because right now my kids are 4 and 1.5, and it's tough on my wife when I have to travel because she herself has her own business. She's an optometrist and she has patients and a clinic to run. So from that perspective, it's tough. But yeah, you can record it at home or you can record it at their studio. If you record it at home, they'll give you like this proper setup, headphones and microphones and amp, and you've got to use their software, and they do it all proper.
So they streamline it for you. There's no much for you to figure out other than looking presentable.
Yeah, and I opt to do courses where I'm not on screen just because most of the time I'm recording, it's like midnight, 2, 3 in the morning, whatever, and I'm not trying to be on screen. And so I just have the script. And when I do record, my actual face is just the intro video or the exit video. And that's about it.
Yeah, I didn't know that was an option to hide a little bit, but that makes it even better, especially for like reshoots. You don't have to recreate the exact same studio setup that you had before. Okay, so we mentioned your writing. Let's talk about writing a little bit. The generative generation is the one I know. It seems to have a lot of stuff around AI in a nice, approachable format, very casual. What's the story behind that? You just had too much free time, or is that part of your day job as well?
No, generative generation is my own newsletter. Like I haven't published on there for over a month. So if you're a subscriber and you haven't heard from me, apologies. Life has been busy. I also write like for the Voxel 51 newsletter. Like I do 2 newsletters a month. And as a way for me to save time, they're like, you can just copy and paste whatever you write for our newsletter, put it on your newsletter and just say it's sponsored by Voxel 51. I'm allowed to double dip from that respect. The generative generation itself, like I have a template for it. So I talk about news, and I try to go into news that is not like already rampant on Twitter or things that you've probably already heard from other sources. And I try to keep it specific to like industry stuff that's happened. So like how people in the industry are using either generative AI or deep learning as a whole. And so I look for specifically that type of news content to feature. So I'll have a few links for interesting news. And then I'll talk about a GitHub gem. So something interesting I came across in GitHub. And time permitting, I'll include like a notebook that you can hack around with that involves that particular GitHub gem. And I call it GitHub gem, but in general, it could be an interesting model on Hugging Face, interesting data set, or just something code forward that I've come across. And yeah, I'll include like also events that are coming up from around the community that I've picked up on my radar, and a research paper that I recently read and digested.
I wanted to ask you about the events that are important in your space, specifically for anybody who might be listening who come a little bit from the general software engineering. That's going to be a good portion of listeners to this, and might be interested to dip their toes into some of the events. What are the most important ones that they should be going to?
I think it really does depend on the person and what they're trying to learn, where they're trying to go with their career, right? And obviously there's the big in-person events. There's, for example, last week I was at CVPR. Was it last week or the week before? I can't even remember anymore. But it was the CVPR Computer Vision Pattern Recognition Conference, which is like the biggest conference in computer vision. And that's a great place to get up to speed on the most current research that's visual AI first. But there's also webinars and hackathons and stuff that you can attend. So webinars, my friends at AI Makerspace have some of the best webinars that are like beginner-friendly first content that will introduce you to something. And they go from beginner to intermediate first, and that their stuff is awesome. Hackathons are also a lot of fun. You can do those locally in your own community, and that's great if you want to just get hands-on, write code. So it really does depend on your style of learning. If you just like to consume content, maybe attend a webinar. If you want to learn from the people in industry about what's cutting edge, what's new, then maybe you attend a webinar where a lot of it is talk first with a panel of people. So you get this overview of topics. If you want to just write code and collaborate with people, go to hackathons. And I think hackathons are super important, especially if you're earlier in your career, because you build that muscle of writing code with a group of people, right? So not just you working on a project that's individual to you, but coming together and, working on a shared repository together, I think is super critical. Big industry conferences, unless you're really advanced in your career, probably not worth your time going to.
So I guess I won't ask you to name drop the ones you don't think that are worth it. But I do personally find that when I start in a new domain, going to one of the bigger events helps me discover the topics that I need to find out more about. So in that respect, it might be good, but it can be also very overwhelming. Like in my domain, if anybody goes to KubeCon today, well, it's like 20,000 people or some ridiculous number like that, and there's 500 sponsors and million booths and stuff. It feels more like a fun fair or a small town, and it might actually have the opposite effect. It might actually stun your growth and understanding what's going on unless you go and figure it all out by yourself. So fair enough, but are there any in-person events in particular in like the AI space that you would say are the flagships that people should at least consider?
Yeah, CVPR for sure. That's like the biggest conference in computer vision. There's ECCV. Every other year, they alternate between being ECCV, European Conference on Computer Vision, and ICCV, which is International Conference on Computer Vision. Those 4 big ones. ICLR, NeurIPS is another big one as well. ICML. There's so many, but I think those are like the big ones. There's one that's happening in its second year, the AI Engineer Summit. The persona there is more the AI engineer, more kind of applied type of stuff rather than research focused. But yeah, those are definitely like the big ones. For sure, I go to the big conferences. Like I was at CVPR. I'll definitely be at ECCV, which is in Milan, Italy this year. And then in NeuroIPS, which is right here in Canada this year. Maybe I'll go to another one. We'll see. But it's hard with little kids to travel. Luckily, there's a couple of young guys on my team, and they're free and flexible to travel.
So did you actually manage to lower the amount of traveling that you're doing now? With, you said a year or a year and a half old? Or you're still traveling a lot?
The last couple of months have been a bit abnormal. So I've been traveling a lot. Like over the last 6 weeks, I was gone 3 weeks. But going forward, it'll be a little bit more tempered. It is still part of the job description. I still do need to go travel and make appearances at places, but I'll try to keep that to the biggest conferences or places that I can get to in one flight and just do a quick stop in, hop out type of motion. But I'm trying to limit the multiple night stays in different locations as much as I possibly can.
And the jet lag, I'm guessing.
Yeah, most of the stuff is continental North America, so it doesn't hit me as bad. There's the younger guy on my team, Dan. He's heading to London, I think a couple of times this summer, and I think some other place in Europe as well. But yeah, like that would be too much.
That can be a lot, but yeah, for some people that's the excitement. That's why they do it, partly. So what did we cover? What did I miss? Oh, you had a podcast, right? You had Artists of Data Science. I couldn't find it anymore, so I assume it's no more.
Yeah, the Artists of Data Science. I recently changed the name to the Harpreet Podcast. I've got a backlog of podcasts that are more technical in nature, and these are podcasts I recorded while I was at Deci AI, and I'm not going to use them anymore. So I'm going to put them to work. I'm sure NVIDIA doesn't care. They're not going to come and find me and tell me not to use that stuff. So I figured I'll repurpose that content. So now the podcast is called the Harpreet Podcast, and I've got like a backlog of maybe 20 really, really technical, deep learning focused and Gen AI focused topics that I'm going to be publishing through that. And I think a few of the RSS links might have broken, especially for Apple Podcasts and maybe Google Podcasts. But if you look on Spotify, type in the Harpreet Podcast, that should show up. But yeah, it was originally known as the Artists of Data Science. That podcast I did for a couple of years, and I had well over 300 episodes that I've done. And there's multiple formats for that. There's one format which it was me talking to like technical practitioners and talking to New York Times bestselling artists. And then there's this data science happy hour, which had a lot of the big names on LinkedIn that would come together every Friday, 4:30 p.m. Central Time. And we just talk about data science and data science related topics. And a lot of people drop in and ask their questions. And I try to, as much as possible, minimize the how do I get a job in data science question, because honestly, I hate that question. I hate when people ask me that question. And when people like message me, how do I get a job in data science? Dude, please never message me and ask me that question. I apologize. That's just not what I'm into. There are other people who make a career off that, which is fine. I'm never going to be the guy that becomes a data scientist and then quits their job to teach you how to be a data scientist. I guess what's the Batman quote? You either live long enough to see yourself become a senior data scientist, or you quit your job to teach other people to become a data scientist. Yeah, that's not for me. I just went on a rant, dude. I apologize for that. But yeah, go look at the Arts of Data Science. It's on YouTube too, at Data Science Harp. You'll find some the archived stuff there. Just good content, man. Like there's really good content. I enjoyed my time doing it while I did it. But I noticed that everything comes with the opportunity cost, right? There's always a sacrifice you got to make. So the time I spent prepping for those podcasts and recording those podcasts, and I would go on insane sprints where I'd record 12 episodes in a week. And I was doing that for months on end. That ate into my time to learn other stuff. I felt like I suffered along with that because I was too busy reading other people's works or reading about other people, coming up with questions and recording interviews and doing editing and all that stuff. It took a hit on my technical skills. So I backed up off that a little bit. If there are podcasts that I record now, they're primarily just as a function of the job that I have. Maybe at some point when free time is a thing, yes, I might revamp that podcast completely. But as of right now, dude, like just that kind of fire in me to have that podcast has just been extinguished. It's not what I'm interested in doing right now.
You did say 12 episodes a week. That's what you said. That's the number you gave. Jesus.
Yeah, I was recording them and then like dripping them out. So like I have over that podcast was about 2 years old. Like I had it for just over 2 years. I had that podcast running. It was active. And in that span of 2 years, I'd recorded something like about 300 episodes, probably over 300 episodes. It was just wild.
That is an absurd number of episodes. That is just crazy. Even if you spend 2-3 hours prepping for one of these and then 2 hours recording that, and then let's say another 2-3 hours editing that is a full-time job, and then some. But you've got a library and you can reuse that, like you said now, which is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's the cool part about the internet, man. It's like it's out there, and hopefully it'll be out there forever in some way, shape, or form, right? The internet never really deletes itself. Just knowing that 10, 20 years down the line, if my kids want to Google me or whatever the fuck the search engine of the time is, things will come up. If my grandkids, great grandkids, they Google me, things will come up. Like, I don't even know my great grandpa's name. And even if I did Google them, things won't pop up. For that, I think that's pretty cool. Like, you can ask a language model about tell you who I am, which for sure is cool.
Yeah, and I also wanted to pick up on the other thing you said about the opportunity cost, which is one of those things that are super easy once you thought about that, but so many people take like decades and decades of their life until they realize that there is such a thing. And for me, weirdly enough, if I had like a genie in a bottle, I would probably waste one of my wishes just to find out what's the average and standard deviation of the average age of a person when they figure out that, yeah, opportunity cost is a thing and I should take it seriously. Because it's so powerful. I'm glad you brought it up. What's next for you? What's in the store? I think that's the stuff that I managed to find out about you, but you seem to be the kind of guy that just always has something brewing.
It's just this never-ending quest for me to just gain skill and knowledge. So luckily, I'm in a field where that's never going to stop. New knowledge in deep learning is happening daily, right? I've got a core skill set of being able to write code and reason through code and figure out patterns in code. That stuff is, I think, good. I can always get better for sure. I'm not like a 10x engineer. I might not even be a 1x engineer, right? But I know enough to put stuff to work. And now it's just a matter of just figuring out what to do with it. Right now, the name of the game is just still I got 2 small kids, 4-year-old, 1.5-year-old. We're building our dream house. I just literally handed our realtor, drained my bank account, handed the guy $250,000 as a deposit to go build this house. And that's another 1.4 million to go on top of that to build the house out. I'm very much now focused on just like the stability thing for at least the immediate short term. So for the next 3 to 5 years, I do see myself continuing to work as a hacker in residence in some capacity, working with startups in some capacity, right? Like the reason I left working at Price Industries, which is a local company here in Winnipeg, and big company, I could have worked there forever. Would I have made as much money as I'm making now? Probably not. It's just what it is. Continue to work on startups for sure, and hopefully continue to place the right bets at the startups I work at so that my options do pay off. I made the right bet, I think, with DESI, and luckily those options paid off enough to help. And working at Voxel 51 for sure. I think I'm with the right team for sure. It's always going to be this never-ending quest of like hard work I can always account for. That's just always in my control. I can control how hard I work for sure. That's one leg of the stool, but there's 2 other legs. It's who I work with and what I work on. So those 2 will always be like the never-ending quest. I feel right now working at Voxel 51 for sure. I'm working with the right group of people on a very important product that is essential to building better AI systems. So I firmly believe that. And be at Voxel until we IPO or get acquired, like for sure. As long as they will have me here, and as long as there's, that, I will be at Voxel 51 for as long as I can. I want to see this thing through. After that, it'll probably be another startup. And I just want to continue iterating on that for a couple of times, right? Have a couple of exits and continue to find the right product and the right people to work with and work on, and have successful exits. And hopefully by the time, like I'm 41 now, right? Like I'm old compared to most people in the field. And hopefully by the time I'm 55, there's a couple of exits that have been done and I've got some street cred. Maybe I can get more and more into investing, right? I'm dabbling with investing in companies right now, but I would like to expand that going forward and maybe do more advising and consulting as a solo shop. Like I wouldn't mind picking up clients now for how to make RAG a reality at their organizations and guiding and consulting them. I definitely want to do some of that. But yeah, that's how I see the future. As long as I'm still working on cutting edge technology with the right group of people and learning, I think I'll be happy.
I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people that's describing the dream life for quite a few. But I also wanted to ask you about how long does it take to build a house in Canada?
So we should be in this new house by this time next year. I'm hoping. I live in Winnipeg and it gets really cold in Winnipeg. Like the ground will freeze. Like it gets -50 in the winter.
Yeah.
In the dead of winter, -20s on average is no big deal. So they got to break ground as soon as possible, get the foundation laid. But yeah, by this time next year, that house should be done. And it really is my wife and I's dream house. We just celebrated 9 years of marriage. We're going to the 10th year of marriage. Got the 2 kids. She got her business going. I'm doing my thing. And we're building this house right on the river, riverfront property. And it's really is a dream house, forever home. So really proud and excited about that.
Well, congratulations. Hopefully it works out very easily and smoothly for you. For anybody who's thinking, okay, yeah, this is a cool thing. This guy is ahead of me, maybe 10, 15 years. What advice would you give them to maybe land where you are or maybe higher?
All right. So I mentioned I'm 41, right? Like I did not spend time in my 20s wisely at all. Like maybe it's the circumstances of where I grew up and who I grew up around. Definitely environment does play a key role. People should have their head on straight and not get sucked into those kind of negative influences or just become a statistics for what's around them. If the same thing I'll tell my cousins that are in their 20s. I got cousins that are in their early 20s, just graduated. And it's, don't think that right now is the time for you to like party and enjoy life and rage out. No, dude, right now is the time for you to double down on technical skills. You have the time and the energy to pull all-nighters and really hone in on developing some skill. It doesn't even have to be writing code. Whatever it is that you want to do probably requires you to have some skill. And now is the time for you to pull all-nighters and just go all in on it. And just work as incredibly hard as you possibly can at that age before you have kids, because then that shit becomes really hard, man. Like me working as hard as I am now, it's trying to make up time for the stupid shit I did in my 20s. And maybe, yeah, whatever. Like right now, like things are congealing in the industry now that are making it possible for me to take advantage of what's happening. And so there's definitely that aspect of it, but no, still could have worked harder in my youth. So you don't want to be an old man like me with young kids trying to work extremely hard and then have to worry about raising a young family at the same time. That's just hard. So yeah, just repeating myself here. Find whatever it is that you're interested in and just work your fucking face off. Just do not stop.
Yeah, that's the kind of advice that nobody wants to hear. They want to hear like a life hack, a thing that will just turn stuff around for them so that they can have the wild years. But I'm afraid you're right. I'm afraid that this is how you do it. And then when you're old, you can tell everybody you never had a youth.
There is a life hack. The life hack is called discipline. So if you master that, then things that you just hack the shit out of everything because you're disciplined and you can get shit done. So yeah, that's a life hack. You mentioned I'm big on social media. I don't even know how the hell I got big on social media. It's not like I'm consistently posting stuff on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I think it's just a byproduct of maybe when people do have interactions with me, maybe real recognize real, and they're just like, oh, okay, this guy's cool. We'll support him with a follow or whatever. Newsletter, I don't even know how that thing got that big. Anything, like just because I'm not out there being performative, I think. I don't know. But
I feel like this is the same thing with everything, right? It's, I don't know, sugar blood level, right? You need a certain level and you can optimize it, but if you go too far, you get diabetes. I feel like I really met you here. I'm glad we talked. I'm glad we could cover some of that stuff. And for anybody who thinks, okay, I need to go and check out this guy, where do they start?
LinkedIn for sure. You can find me there. Twitter at Data Science Harp. Medium also at Data Science Harp. YouTube at Data Science Harp. Those are all kind of places where I may consistently or inconsistently post, but really I'm kind of everywhere. Like I might already be in your favorite Discord community answering questions and you just don't know it's me or whatever, but I'm a bit everywhere, but those are the main places that folks can find me.
Awesome. And do you actually go by Harp? Is that how you prefer to be called?
I used to, a long time ago. I would tell people to make it easy on them. But then I realized my name has less syllables than Nathaniel or Jonathan. So I'm like, you can say Harpreet. So just say Harpreet. I'm not going to shorten my name to make it easier on you. This is my name. Just fucking say it. So that, yeah.
I respect that. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here calling myself Miko, where in fact it's Miko Y, but It gave me so much trouble that a few years in, I just gave up. I was like, okay, fine. You guys are not capable of doing that. It's going to be Miko now.
Yeah. I used to definitely go by Harp a lot. For some platforms, I guess kept it as data science Harp just because the limit on user characters of your username. But yeah, definitely just go by Harpreet nowadays.
Awesome. All right. So before I let you go, I'm going to throw you a curveball. I'm going to steal this one from Tim Ferriss, and I'm just going to ask you the same question, actually. If you had a billboard with a message you can display that a lot of people will see, and you're free to say whatever you want on that, what would you say?
What would I say on this giant billboard that everybody can see? So probably just skills greater than destiny. I like that. Just work on skills. Skills are greater than destiny with a double greater than sign.
I like that. Cool answer. All right, Harpreet, thank you so much for coming. This was an absolute pleasure. And hopefully I'll see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And cheers to everybody for listening.